Welcome to our first episode of Coffee and Code, a monthly video podcast, if you will, for Acumatica Developers by Acumatica Developers. As you can glean from the title, Coffee and Code, it's really meant to be kind of a casual conversation amongst developers, covering various topics, developer practices, developer experiences, and just miscellaneous knowledge with one another for the community. So sit back and relax, get your favorite cup of brew, coffee, or if you prefer another delightful beverage of your choice, such as tea. I know in Britain and in Russia, tea's a pretty big thing. Cheers to everyone. So the general format is, we have guests on a monthly basis, and we'll introduce a topic followed by discussion with questions from our live audience, who happens to be our developer MVPs. So there's about 21 developer MVPs currently active at Acumatica, and we have several here today, and we'll keep inviting our guest developers to help ask questions and keep the conversation lively. As I mentioned, I plan to produce a monthly episode where we invite, Acumatica developers, both internal and external. So we'll host also developer MVPs on various topics, and also we'll have some of our technical executives. And I'm aiming roughly for quarterly for them to be guests. So today, I'm pleased to have Sergey Marenich, a longtime developer here at Acumatica, one of the original core developer who's been around for roughly 14 years, I believe. Many of you out there watching recognize, of course, Sergey Marenich's name. You may not recognize him since he's got a full-on thick beard right now. So Sergey is here to chat about some of our developer processes our engineering team employed at Acumatica. And without further ado, welcome, Sergey. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and provide some context and background for today's topic?
Thanks, Mark, and hi, everyone. Coffee and Code. Cheers to everyone. So my name is Sergey Marenich. I'm a team lead at the Commerce Edition of Acumatica, Commerce Edition team at Acumatica now. I have been working in Acumatica for 14 years, as Mark mentioned, and through this period, I have seen the dramatic change in the company from a developer startup to actually mature development machine where we produce dozens, or actually I think hundreds of different features every release. And I'm sure you can imagine how many changes, attempts, failures, successes we have experienced through this growing period. And today I want maturing of this development and engineering processes is very important for me personally because Commerce Edition team and Commerce Edition itself entering a new phase of scalability. Within a pretty short period of time, I think about like 7 months, Commerce Edition went from 0 customers to 30 live customers. And this is just the beginning. And with this volume and with this growth, we suddenly got a lot of questions which we haven't had before when there were no customers. Like, how do we manage the volume of bugs which we receive from all our customers? How do we keep our customers happy about the changes and development and the product itself? How to balance between quality of the product and features, because we still need to conquer a market. Even the product is pretty new, we still, and actually counting that the product is pretty new, we have to conquer the market and bring more features, but we need to care about the existing customers. And how to scale from these 30 customers to 300 customers or 3,000. The most powerful answer for all these questions is actually development and engineering processes. So today I want to speak exactly about it. And to set the stage, Acumatica through the whole history, went through the multiple different phases. In the beginning, in the first 3 to 5 years, our processes were like extreme programming, where everyone is responsible for everything, collective ownership, constant continuous integration, constant refactoring on the fly. Extreme programming is one of the agile methodologies. Actually, within this period of time, I remember we did a lot of changes without much testing, like committed in the base branch and then did the testing post facto, which was fine for the startup company. But when you grow, it's not working anymore. So soon, with growing number of customers and team members, we faced a number of changes. We started to adopt mature engineering processes, and here I want to give you a small list of what we've done as a part of today's maturity. So first thing is source control. It was the first step. We moved from TFS to Git to be able to leverage branching policies very efficiently. So we should be able to scale from 10 developers to 200 developers, and all of these people should be able to work simultaneously on the same product. So branching was very important for us, and source control too. Code review. So the next step was we have to do code review before every merge. And this is because we need to ensure that the code quality is there. We need to make sure that we need to try to minimize the technical debt and mistakes before we merge to the main branch. Regression testing too. So that was one of the further steps. We have to make sure that the branch change feature passed all the regression testing before we merge it to the main version. Functional specification too, like we need to make sure that functional specification is prepared, reviewed, and approved by the dedicated committee before we start the development. And the reason is very simple. It's much cheaper to redesign the functional specification comparing to redesign or redevelop the product. So even if you prepare a specification and throw it away, it's still cheaper for the company. So this was an important process. Feature development lifecycle. So when we do the feature, what does it mean when feature is done? When feature is done, when we commit the code, when we run tests, when we prepare documentation, maybe when everything is there. So this was an important stage for us, defining the definition of done, what means done. What does when we prepare the feature is supposed to be done, and we need to find what does it mean. Then we went through the release life cycles. When we release, how often, what are the procedures around it. Technical specifications, similar to the functional specification, but technical specification is focused on the same architecture of the whole product, so you easily can plug and play different things and keep the same architecture across the product. Release notes and known issues, also important engineering procedure where development team need to inform outer world of what has been done. Then support processes, how do we communicate with the clients, how do we help them, how fast we can help them. Then we also adopted the quarterly release planning. So every quarter development team is planning the features for the next quarter. And this is the most essential part to balance between maintenance and bug fixing and feature development. So through this planning, we were able to stabilize the processes and do a lot of new features, keeping the maintenance of existing codes. And lastly, when you look at all of this stuff, you need to control it. So we went with the quality control and KPIs around all these processes to make sure it works perfectly. So that's the subject for today, and I would appreciate your questions around the engineering and development processes within Acumatica.
All right, well, why don't I kick it off with a question. So can you tell us a little bit? I know we've, with Acuminator and some other tools, we've have our test API and so forth, release a lot of good tools for our developers to improve their programming and their applications. And so, but I'd really think it'd be awesome if you could talk a little bit about, some of the tools we use to manage a lot of what you just talked about. I mean, you talked about a lot of different areas, but what processes and tools do you use to actually manage that?
Sure, Mark, thanks for your question. So obviously, beside the Visual Studio and Microsoft SQL Server, we use quite some other tools. So from the engineering standpoint, we use full Atlassian stack of technologies. That means that we have Jira for bug tracking and analysis of bugs. We have Confluence for the functional and technical documentations. We have Bitbucket as a source code repository and pull requests there. We have Bamboo, which is a build server. So all these four stuff, it's a part of the Atlassian stack. Besides that, we use Acumatica internally, for sure, as a financial system and CRM too. We also have an in-house built product based on Acumatica, which calls Test Portal. Test Portal helps us to run regression tests. We also have some in-house automations like bots, which are interacting between some of the systems. And if we jump into the development areas, we actually use some tools from like ReSharper, .trace, .memory for the deep technical investigations. I think that's the most common, obviously Acuminator too. I think that's the most common tools that we have used from day-to-day basis.
Okay. So anyone have any other questions?
Yeah. So you mentioned the different these different tools that you use and how you prepared for working with bigger teams. So this you mentioned a lot of doing continuous integration and continuous delivery. And so what does that mean specifically? How did you in Acumatica execute that practically, and how does that look like inside your day-to-day work?
Sure. Continuous delivery is, we need to separate it from the release cycles, right? Continuous delivery means that you are able to commit the code or finish your code and complete the cycle to be able to deploy this fix on the production. Like being able doesn't mean you need to do that, right? So we have two things, like we separate it. We have release cycles, but we also have continuous delivery. So how our continuous delivery looks like? So it's really full automation from commit to the ready build. And this is done through Atlassian technologies and some in-house automations. So let's review the process. So as a developer, I commit the code, I make a change, I commit it in Git, and I push it to the Bitbucket server. When I commit, I have to specify the Jira ticket, because we always do the change in scope of the Jira tickets. So I have to specify one or multiple. So then I commit, and the next step I do, I need to create a pull request on the Bitbucket server. Then, as a reviewer, I need to add a certain bot that we have created for Bitbucket. So we insert there a special bot, then that starts to actually process this pull request. First thing this bot does, it's check the pull request, check this branch, and create a build on the fly. So it triggers the Bamboo server to trigger the build on the fly based on the pull request. So then when build is ready, bot automatically gets it and posts the result into the pull request. And then it contacts the next tool, which is Test Portal. And it's in queue the task for automatic regression testing for this particular change. because changes are connected with Jira tickets, we actually can convert Jira components to the regression tests. Let's say if my Jira ticket was related to distribution or sales order, then their component will be there as sales order. Bot will find it and will run only the regression test for the sales order. So we don't need to test everything within the small changes. But we obviously can run the test for the whole Acumatica if necessary. Then when test portal complete the test cycle, we have this bot automation gets back to the pull request and either approves it if everything is fine, or reject it or need work, makes this flag need work to the pull request if there is any error. Then developer can go back and see what is happening there and review the test results and continue to work on it. Important thing that all this stuff is happening with notifications. So from the commit and pull request, you don't really need to do anything. It's all automated. Build is created automatically. Build is deployed automatically. Tests are running automatically. So that's all very, very efficient. That's what we understand and do under the continuous delivery within Acumatica.
Hey, Sergey, I had a question around quality. I'm just curious on how your team ensures quality of your release.
Okay, so that's perfect question. I like it a lot because that's a very important subject for us, for my team right now. The quality is, there is no silver bullet to ensure the quality. So quality comes out of everything you do and out of every single person within a team. So developers need to write a quality code. Business analysts need to produce a quality specifications. Quality assurance engineers needs to ensure the quality. Everyone needs to be in the mindset that the quality most important. Like we have some ideas that usability and performance are actually very tight connected to the quality, because if you are a user, you think that if you understand the system, if you reverse, when you actually use the system, you reverse engineer the system from what it was done by developer to your own understanding. And if you understand it easily and smoothly, then you can say the user will say your system has a better quality. So everything you do is connected to the quality. So my recommendation for the development teams to communicate it, that to every single developer, every single person needs to understand that this message and work on improving it, on improving the quality on day-to-day basis. But formally speaking, when we release our builds, our quality is based on the set of regression tests which we run before the release. We have about 2,500 rounded regression tests which we run every time before the next release cycle. So if pass rate of all these regression tests is about like 99.9, then we can say that our build has a good quality.
Okay, thank you. So basically, you kind of answered my question around testing new Acumatica builds. So it's around that regression testing, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So Sergey, one question about that is, how often do we actually do our builds? Is it nightly, weekly, monthly? How often do we do a complete build of Acumatica?
Like, as I said, as a part of the continuous delivery, every developer creates a build for himself after creation of pull request. So we may create hundreds of builds in a day if it's close to the merge deadline, let's say, or we may have one build in a day if it's a holiday. So it's actually, we produce a lot of builds because of testing and everything there.
Okay, great.
I have a question.
Good. Go ahead, Yuri.
Yeah. So my question would be, what kind of testing infrastructure you have inside of Acumatica?
Yeah, awesome question. Yeah, I mentioned that we have 2,005 around that, 2,500 tests, but how to run it all within a single night? So we actually have a farm of physical servers, and on this farm of physical servers, we have a farm of virtual machines. So till now, we're still using Hyper-V servers for this virtualization, but actually we're actively moving from Hyper-V servers to Docker, so that will help us to leverage, to reuse our test servers even more. But so far, again, we have a farm of the servers. We have about, I think, around 200, maybe 300 virtual machines on these servers. And there is a orchestrator, the main tool, which is a test portal. So this test portal does following. If you create a new build, I mean, wherever you create a new build, you can go to the test portal and say, I want to test this build. So this test portal will contact the virtual machines, will find which virtual machine is free, and will get a list of tests. Let's say you may have 100 of tests, and will incur these tests to the virtual machines. So each virtual machine will be deployed, restored actually, then it will deploy the version of Acumatica there, then it will run the test there, and then the test portal will collect the result. So it's pretty complicated from one side, but it's actually working pretty well through this Hyper-V server management. Obviously, there is an overhead for deploying and removing virtual machines, so that's why we're moving to Docker. Yep, so I think that's in general how we do that.
Okay. What about unit tests? How do you write them? Do you have initially unit tests written and then code, or vice versa? And do you run unit tests against all versions?
We have three types of tests in Acumatica. The first type of test is, we call it black box testing, which is done through the Selenium WebDriver. So that's where we use Selenium. We deploy Acumatica using the Selenium WebDriver. We open the browser, and there is a script which actually opens Acumatica and does something like a user. We call it black box testing because Acumatica is a black box from the testing standpoint. The second type of tests is the API test. So we can use contract-based or REST-based API, or actually previous SOAP version API, and we can send something to Acumatica, some objects, and expect the result. So we send, we receive result, we compare, this is a test. And then third type of test we use, it's a unit test. So unit tests, which are based on our own Acumatica unit test framework, which allows us to initialize the certain business logic container within a memory, fill it with data without a database, and then we test some certain logics, methods, or events within Acumatica itself. So black box testing is done by the quality assurance team almost all the time. API tests, we usually share it. Sometimes it's done by developers, sometimes it's done by the quality assurance engineer. It depends on multiple different things. And the final unit tests, it's almost always done by developer. So that's how it works.
Okay.
Sergey, first and foremost, thank you for taking the time today. Spend with us every time that I listen to things that you have to share with us. Always glean some really valuable insights, and so I really appreciate the time. Our company is a pretty small one. We're a customer, so our focus isn't about writing software. Our focus is about our business, and so software is just one of the things that we do in support of that. So that means that we have a relatively small technical team, whereas you guys have a tremendous machine of developers and engineers and all that, all around the software. So one of the things that you had mentioned earlier was code review. And with a lot of customers out there that may have very small teams like us, with maybe only even one developer that even could understand the software, let alone write it, what are some of the pros and cons of code review?
Do you think there are any concerns about the code review? I to be honest, think there are only the the benefits of doing it. And let me explain why. The first thing is when you do the code review between team members, you do the experience exchange, because one developer might be stronger in one area and another developer is stronger in another area. And by cross review, you get experience exchange. So your team is growing. Second thing is you are able to teach your juniors. So if you do the code review between senior and junior, the senior can point some mistakes of the junior and help him to improve. Secondly, junior can review the code of senior and get up to speed faster. Thirdly, you actually minimizing the number of mistakes in the code during the code review, because if one person checks another person, you can easily point some small mistakes like it's not null reference exception or something like that. And the fourthly, actually, if you approach the code review properly and you will be strict with the code review rules, you won't allow if I say simple, if you won't allow bad code to pass through the code review, you will actually minimize the amount of technical debt that you have in your product. And if you minimize the technical debt and if you do the right things right from the start, it will be much easier for you to support the product. Obviously, you said you are a small team. So if you have a small team and you are only one person in the organization, it's really hard for you to do the code review. But even in this case, I think it's still useful, because if you commit the code first, but you check it even by yourself before merging, it helps to think about the code from the side. So I personally think there are only benefits of doing code review.
Hi, Sergey. I have a question related to upgrades. One of the challenges that we face the most is we have a customization built within Acumatica. It works perfectly. And then we are facing with the process of upgrading the customers or whomever may be using these customizations. So in some cases, it's pretty straightforward. But in some other cases, it does require some more tweaking in the logic and revision and so forth. So I was wondering, what are the, I would say, best practices that you recommend that we could implement to manage this upgrade process?
That's outstanding thing, outstanding question. You know, Commerce Edition was started as a customization. So all the things you say, I know it by myself. We went through that. You know, and again, there is no silver bullet, but I think I have found several rules which helps us to go through these customizations, with this customization through versions of Acumatica relatively smooth. And I would tell you several points. First of all, regression testing. So if you write at least a few regression tests, whatever you do, you can use API regression test. You can use black box testing with Acumatica Test SDK. If you write at least several of them, after each upgrade, you can run them, and you can make sure that at least one single important function of your software works perfectly. If you write more than one, then obviously you can cover much more functionality with regression tests. So in the beginning, it takes a little bit of your time, but in long terms, it smooths the process significantly, because you just upgrade, you run test, and it's either passed or not. If it's not passed, you need to take a look, and it's a flag for you, right? So the second rule which I have is we need to try to minimize the number of things that you override within Acumatica, and luckily, Acumatica allows you to use events. Like Acumatica code is event model. So in most cases, you actually can not override the existing function, but you can implement an additional event that will be working in parallel with existing function. Like, just give you example. If something is going wrong in the base event, instead of like overriding the base event, you actually can trigger the base event and then fix it after the event execution, because you're actually able to control the sequence of events too, right? So my advice, try to minimize the things that you override or replace within Acumatica code by just injecting something new. Same with attributes. Don't override attributes. Use this customized base attribute function, for example, which saves a lot of time. It's actually also important because when you upgrade, if you override something, you need to double check the base code if base code is changed or not, because if it's changed, you actually have to maintain your code too. In long terms, every single line of code that you have replaced will significantly add the cost to the upgrade procedure. Okay, third thing is Acumatica is doing better customer support. Before each major release, we release the beta version, which is very close to the final ready to web or generally available version. And my advice, try your customization earlier, which will give you more time without rush to complete this upgrade procedure. And final advice, like with Commerce Edition, we decided to synchronize Acumatica release sequence, release cycle, with our customization release cycle. When, let's say, when Acumatica release 2021 R1 update 1, after a week or maybe after just 2 weeks, we release our own Acumatica Commerce Edition 2021 R1 Update 1 version. Why it's important? It's important because if you do the smaller steps, it's easier for you to be on top of this, because small steps are just like come in and so on. But if you wait for 2 years without any upgrades, it will be a nightmare for you. Sometimes it will be easier to replace and redevelop the customization than upgrade. So that's some of the advices.
Good info. Thank you, Sergey.
Hey, Sergey. I have a question for you regarding the upgrades. Within the partner portal, you do put out a list of objects within the development framework that are deprecated or in some cases removed, but is there additional documentation which specifies what the replacement is?
So you mean the technical release notes? So yes, before every release, we publish these technical release notes where we choose we keep the difference between the previous version and the new version, and you're able to see what has been added or removed. With replacements, it's more complicated. I think it's here we need to actually drill inside the release, maybe functional or the more descriptive release notes, because obviously not always a replacement is easy, because like if there is a replacement, that means that you need to change something, and changing something is not always like you just replace one name to another one. We're trying to not make these breaking changes where you just rename one method to another one, because it's not always makes sense, and it gives you as a partners and customers quite a lot of headache. So I think answering your question, we need to be case by case accurate. So my general advice would be, if you're really struggling to find how to replace it, create a development support request to us, and our team will be more than happy to provide this information to you. And if there will be a few support requests like you have, we will for sure create an article on our community that will cover how to make these things, how to make this transition.
Understood. Thank you.
My question is in context to cross-team collaboration. So for larger projects, you're going to need to work with other teams that may be internal or external. Do you have any insights on how you collaborate between teams?
It's awesome question. We actually struggling sometimes internally with that, because I think we have around 15 teams in Acumatica internally already. Mostly teams are separated by the function model, like payroll team, payroll model, commerce team, commerce model, and things like this. So in most cases, it's working perfectly by having this separate teams per model. But sometimes, obviously, the teams needs to be there is a functionality which is cross team. So we are still internally discussing if we can have some sort of the functional teams, the virtual team, which will be combined from the different people, and we will have basically a set of people, the functional team per feature. But it's just in the discussions yet. So far, our primary tools are the specifications, basically the functional and technical specifications. So when one team who is responsible for this feature or for this change actually prepares the functional specification, then or technical specification, so then we send it through the email to the to what we call product managers committee and architect committee. So there are two set of people. So product managers committee, it's more like a business analysts and product managers who can review the functions, the specification, and make some certain actions on their side to work with through that. So same with technical specification and sent to architect committee, and that's developers and architects who can review and make necessary actions within their team. So we rely on this distributed process. Sometimes you obviously need to have a person who is an owner for the function. So this owner we usually assign per every single function. So there is a feature owner. And this owner, his job is to maintain the collaboration and communication within the different teams and people if there is required. Now, beside the standard procedures of this review and approval, the feature owner also can bring needed people into the discussion when necessary. So yeah, that's how we do it right now.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So we're running out of time, but I do want to kind of give you a chance, kind of summarize just a bit your own experience in general. What do you think are if you can always reduce it down to 5 things that you've learned with your tenure at Acumatica?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think
save toughest questions for the end.
Okay, so I think I would highlight the teamwork first, because when I was a young developer, I always thought like single developer with a lot of knowledge can do whatever he wants. But with experience, I understand that teamwork is extremely important, and small but good team can be far more effective and efficient than any of the best developer. Teamwork and connection between team members and environment within your team, between your colleagues, it's something you need to pay a lot of attention. So all these collaboration tools, engineering processes are helping it. They should help it, and they should not be the barrier between the people. So then the second thing I would highlight too, with my experiences, questions are always good, because through the questions you learn. So don't hesitate to ask any questions to anyone. Like I want to encourage you, MVP community, to ask questions to us too, because there is no bad question. If you ask questions, you want to learn something. That's your motivation, and this is your will to learn. And we are always happy to help wherever it's possible. Also, I want to reiterate one thing I said already today. Quality is not something can be achieved without the people. So quality is responsibility of everyone. And I think I'm trying to teach my team this idea, and I think it's worth to share it with you. I also think that especially now with this COVID crazy pandemic around us, it's especially important to have a social connections between your team's colleagues, and even sometimes make friends across the different teams, because this collaboration helps you to grow. You can learn something from them, they can learn something from you, and your friends, your colleagues can give you a lot of boost, not only in knowledge, but in terms of how you collaborate and what you do. Like, so I know this is sometimes hard for developers to socialize, but I think it's one of the things we need to learn. And lastly, I say, as a kind of bottom line for all these engineering processes changes, because all the engineering processes and engineering development things, the changes are hard. All the changes are hard to accept, hard to do, but we can do that for sure. So we can change and make something better and learn something out of every single change. So don't be scared of changes, and accept it, learn from it, move forward, change again. So that's my point.
Yeah. Well said. You know, as someone who's, you know, been around Acumatica for 5 years, and my responsibility is the developer community. It's been great experience to be able to interact and make friends both internally and externally. You know, I think all the developer MVPs we meet on a monthly basis, we check in with each other. You know, we share information amongst each other, and that's really what we're trying to do with the community, is share information, have a venue where you can ask questions and learn from each other. And that's, so I think it was nice for you to summarize that, because that's really something that we try to do here at Acumatica with our developer community. So I think that sums things up really well. So thank you again, Sergey, for being generous with your time, your knowledge sharing. It's been great. And to the developer MVPs
My
here,
pleasure.
the developers MVPs here, thanks for your questions. Thanks for sharing your experiences as well. It's been great. This is our first episode, so hopefully people watching it who weren't able to participate live get a lot of value out of this. There's certainly a lot of learning nuggets, that golden nuggets, if you will, of knowledge that Sergey has shared. And I hope you see that, and we'll continue hopefully to deliver, you know, quality events, which segues into, we have our next developer conference coming up on Wednesday, March 10th, and Sergey is going to speak again. I think you're going to be talking about, you know, a subject we haven't really covered much in the last few years. I wrote a blog post, I think, when I started like 5 years ago on how to debug Acumatica, you know, and but Sergey is going to update that, if you will, and provide his great insight into that subject. So looking forward to that. So you can register now. At the end of this presentation, I'll give you a link that you can go and register. We hope to get a large number of people. It's going to be a one-day event rather than a two-day event. And then we have Acumatica Summit in July. So again, we'll have more developer topics that we'll give there as well, and we'll have the hackathon. So lots of things going on. So again, thank you, and cheers to our latest episode of Coffee and Code. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Right.